I am a big supporter of very moderately successful sporting teams. So from a rugby and a football perspective. And so that's a big passion. As you progress in your journey as a leader, then you have to choose where you're going to spend your time.
In my experience, having experienced that myself, I'm not speaking for you now, is sometimes that means our relationships suffer. And I don't mean the relationships that are related to achievement, because they don't suffer. We make sure we spend effort in those. But there are some relationships that suffer because of our hard work.
We behave in line with our leaders, and how they behave, you behave. And so I don't think I was consciously telling people, I want you to work 24/7. But in my behavior, I was saying, this is what I value in myself. On the way to work on that morning, I was crossing a pedestrian crossing and I got knocked down by a hit and run car.
Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest. Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Maurice Doyle has joined me in the studio today. Maurice is an Irish national with 30 years marketing and commercial leadership experience in the global premium beverage industry. His expertise and passion is in sustainable transformation of premium beverage businesses, brands and people. He currently resides in London with his wife Sally and their 3 teenage boys. Maurice, welcome to the show.
Andrew, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to see. I love your backdrop there. You've actually got your products behind you. But before we go into that, tell us a bit more about yourself, Maurice, and where your current focus is.
Yes, so I have been in the spirits industry for over 30 years. I'm currently CEO of Compassbox Whiskey. We're independent whiskey makers. As you mentioned, the backdrop behind me, some of our delicious whiskies on offer there. And we're doing something different in the world of premium whiskey, and it's a lot of fun. We position ourselves as pioneers with positive intent. And I'm fortunate enough to lead a great group of talented and passionate people, trying to help people on their journey through whiskey and discover great tastes of whiskey.
And when I ask that question, it's very normal for my guests to tell us about their profession and obviously what they're doing from a work perspective now. But it's also nice to know when you're not working, Maurice. I know you work really hard and travel a lot, but when you're not working, what kind of passions do you have outside of work?
So obviously family is very important. You mentioned our 3 boys. We also have a slightly neurotic dog that we deal with. I am a big supporter of very moderately successful sporting teams. And so from a rugby and a football perspective. And so that's a big passion. I used to play sport, now play a little paddle, but enjoy watching sports. I enjoy restaurants and travel and going out to the cinema and chilling with family and friends.
Excellent. And it's important that we do as much of that as we can. And sometimes, our roles don't allow us to do that. So thank you for giving the insight into that. And what our audience is really looking forward to hearing from you today is your journey and the highs and lows of that and how we've coped as leaders. So just tell us a little bit about your earlier life and what experiences back then shaped your early leadership style.
So I was brought up in Ireland, as you mentioned, in a medium-sized town on the east coast of Ireland called Bray. And had a very happy childhood. So had one of 4 children, and our parents ran a local newsagent and general store. And so my early memories were my parents working open all hours in running the store. And it sold everything to everybody, the store. And so they were always working there, always a big thing about being kind of in service of the local community. They felt that they mightn't have articulated in that way, but they felt that need. They were offering something. It was before the big supermarkets and certainly before online shopping. So they were offering a local service, and all of us always had to become available to help whenever the shop got busy. So yeah, my earliest memories are working in the family shop.
And what did that do for you then in terms of how it shaped you as a leader? That early experience, because not everyone grows up with, a happy kind of childhood, but seeing their parents working as hard as that, how did that shape your early sort of leadership style as you got into leadership?
Well, I think I inherited some good traits from that, and also some less good traits, probably, it's fair to say. So the idea of being in service of other people, and your job is to meet the needs of other people and delight other people is a great thing in terms of, and so thinking about others and what you can do for others and how you can lead others. I definitely got that from my parents, both of whom were very well connected, and that was an important part of what they were doing. It wasn't just running a shop; they were running a local community service in a way, and that was very important. And so I've got that, a recognition that it's all about people. So the relationships that you build are critical. There were other shops, maybe not immediately available, but there were other shops available. And if the relationship isn't there and you haven't built a relationship with people can choose to go elsewhere. And so that's been a very good thing in terms of, I think I developed from them. The tendency to work all hours and in case of doubt, work even more hasn't always served me well, and that's something which, I've come to terms that sometimes you can work too much on things that don't matter as much, and so keeping the main thing, and really focusing on that, and not spending too much time on other things is something which, over time, through experience, through failure and successes, you learn along the way.
And I'm really glad that you raised that point, Maurice. A lot of people listening to this and watching this can relate to that completely. And I came from a working class family myself, and my father taught me to work hard because I had to work that much harder to be able to get beyond some of the more privileged people in the society. That was the inference around that, and certainly the belief. So just talk to us about that journey, because it serves us very well, I think, as leaders in our 20s and 30s, where we've got that hard work ethic because we do work that extra bit harder than other people, and we run. And then maybe how it starts to work against us a little bit. Just talk us through that.
Yes, so I think having a strong work ethic is a good thing, but actually, as you progress in your journey as a leader, then you have to choose where you're going to spend your time. And I remember I think I was in my early 30s, I got the feedback from the global HR director of this company I was working for. His first time I met him, and he said very complimentary things about me, which is nice to hear. But he also said that he could tell I was over prepared for the meeting with him, and he gave me the piece of advice that said, you can't over prepare for everything. It's just not possible. Because in choosing to over prepare for everything, you're actually making a choice not to make sure you're completely over prepared for the few things that really matter. So making a choice about where you allocate your time is really important. And you just can't, there's only 20, no matter how good you are, there's only 24 hours in a day, only 7 days a week. And so you have to make choices, and that's something that I've got better at while still not being great at, Andrew. But I try and go back to the lesson. It's ultimately it's my choice where I allocate the time. There are some things that really matter, where we have to be great, and I have to be great, and there's other things that don't really matter, and it's fine just to be average at them. But that's a hard lesson, because you try initially, you want to be excellent at everything, but you can't.
Yeah, and again, a lot of people relate to that. And it was lovely what you said there, because I experienced something similar. We have to be receptive to this advice, and it's great that the HR director, felt that they could share that with you in terms of that wisdom. But sometimes, again, we don't listen to it. And I think the time that we maybe do listen to it is when we have to listen to our bodies, because actually what is happening as we're working that hard is we just can't function like that. So can you remember back to a point where actually it wasn't somebody else telling you, it was almost yourself telling you that something had to give here? Was that ever a time in your life?
Yes, I mean, I've been fortunate, I would say, overall in that. But yeah, when you get tired and when you get worn down, your body gives you a message. I know, for me, my resilience, my ability to deal with the occasional bad news that life throws you, is entirely dependent on how much sleep I get, for example. And so, making sure that I manage my schedule to maximize my chances of sleep. So I used to have my phone by my bed, and the last thing I used to do would be check email on the phone, work email, and then there'd be some issue in some part of the world, and I'd lay awake all night kind of thinking about it. But actually, there was nothing I could do about it. So all I was doing was worrying. So it wasn't adding any value. And it was the same when I woke up next morning, it was still going to be the same problem. So then just kind of making a choice not to, to be a bit, put in some boundaries really and ironically, not only is that better for you from a non-work perspective, it's actually much better for you, as I've discovered, it's much better for you from a work perspective too.
Yeah, I agree. And if we think about during the career, and it may be again during the 20s or 30s, when we're really very driven and almost sometimes unaware of the stuff that's going on around us, was there a point where some of your team maybe were giving you messages that actually they couldn't keep up, or it wasn't conducive to them to be high performing? Was there anything there that again you learned from in terms of how you had to adapt your leadership style with a certain team?
Yes, I mean, I think I've probably in the early years been more forgiving and more generous of others than I was to myself. But I'm sure there was definitely times in terms of when I was asking people to do a lot. But actually, I think one of the things that I didn't do well, I was modeling wrong type of behavior, and we all do this. We look to our leaders, and we behave in line with our leaders, and how they behave, you behave. And so I don't think I was consciously telling people I want you to work 24/7. But in my behavior, I was saying, this is what I value in myself. So maybe they were taking the inference from that this is what I value in you. I mean, and there was definitely kind of things where I don't know if you can use an expression, overcommitted, but yeah, I probably was kind of overcommitted and doing things which now, with the benefit of hindsight, don't seem reasonable. And that probably wasn't helpful to other people. I have one looking back slightly humorous example, but I remember when I was doing this role and we were part of a regional team, and all the markets used to come in and make their annual plan presentations. And for this one market, my boss couldn't be there, and he said, "Maurice, I can't be there, but I'd like you to run the meeting. Please, can you be there and make sure it's kind of a good meeting?" I was delighted with the opportunity. He said yes. I was living in Amsterdam at the time. And on the way to work on that morning, I was crossing a pedestrian crossing, and I got knocked down by a hit-and-run car. And so I ended up, it was okay. I ended up slightly concussed, face a bit bashed. But my one thought was, I have to do this meeting. And so dusted myself off, as I thought, did this meeting. It seemed to go okay. At the end of this meeting, I asked the market that were presenting for any feedback. And I said, yeah, we thought it was a great meeting, but we did think it was slightly disconcerting that you were bleeding. Your face was bleeding throughout the entire meeting. And I thought, that probably was going too far. And that was an extreme example. Yeah, but I'm not sure that was modeling the right type of, and that is an extreme example. But whether that was modeling or was the right type of behavior. You have to realize as a leader, people will follow your example. So therefore, the example you set is important.
And we've grown up in very different work cultures to the people that are now. I've got a 29-year-old and younger children as well. But what are you seeing, particularly since COVID, in terms of the way that people like us have led in the past have to adapt to what's happened to those kinds of people and the way they now view life in terms of their relationship to the kind of overcommitment to work that certainly we experienced in our careers?
I think that COVID has accelerated a re-examination for many of their relationship with work. And so I think it's less about kind of work-life balance. It's more about life balance, and work can be for many people a really important part of what they do, and it is for me. But it's only one part of that. And so I think people really have gone on a journey about kind of what work means to them and what their expectations are from work, and what they would deem to be what it means to be part of a fulfilled work environment. And I think some of those trends were changing anyway before COVID, but I think COVID accelerated them. And I think we as leaders, and I think the changes are overall healthy. And I think it's our job as leaders to lead in the environment that's relevant today, not in an environment that was relevant 15, 20 years ago. The good news, I would say, and this is something I've just been lucky in, that actually the principles that I would hold close to my heart as a leader are things which do seem still to be relevant, and maybe more relevant now than they were even 15, 20 years ago. I've always believed in a people-centric leadership. I've never believed that it was either high performance, consistent high performance, or people orientation. I believed, in fact, the only way you can have sustainable high performance over time is by having a people focus. And I think that view would probably be more common now than it was 15, 20 years ago. But we have to adapt to leading in today's environment.
I agree. And I know that you and I in the past have explored and discussed the whole concept of saboteurs. You're obviously a qualified coach yourself, so you're aware of this. And what I love about that kind of language is it reminds us that sometimes the difficulties that appear for us as leaders when we're feeling negative and these saboteurs are in play. So what strategies do you use, Maurice, to actually maintain a neutral or positive type of mindset for your leadership and keep those saboteurs at bay, which are present for all of us every single day? But what techniques do you use yourself?
Well, you mentioned a really important point there, Andrew, the recognition that everybody has them. And my 20-year-old, if I was to go back and give the 20-year-old Maurice some advice, is I would say these other people who seem super confident and seem to have got everything together, they've got their own demons too, and maybe they're different demons to your demons, but everybody is going on a journey, and to understand that is comforting. So there's nothing wrong with having saboteurs. It's part of the human nature. Different people have different ones, but it's part of being human, and that acceptance that acceptance of the fact that we all have these voices that occasionally tell us messages we don't always want to hear. It's just part of human nature. So that's one that's very, very important. My biggest saboteur in terms of would be a hyperachiever. So there's kind of constant need for kind of gratification, and depending on what's happening at that moment, it depends on how well I'm feeling. And I have gone on a journey with that saboteur over the years, and I recognize that that voice comes out. There's certain times when that voice comes out. So I mentioned about being tired. if I'm tired, then that voice comes out way louder than it does otherwise. So sleep is really important for me, and the better quality sleep I have, the more I can control that voice, and so that's an important thing. I think even a simple thing like it's not you, it's this voice, and so it's not me telling me. It's like this voice. It creates a little bit of distance from me and the voice. So it means that what the voice is saying isn't necessarily true. Whereas when it was coming from me, it felt like it had to be true. So it's coming, and so by labeling it as this voice, this negative voice, then I find that easier because, yeah, like with all voices, you can choose to listen or not to listen to a voice, and that's a choice you have. Whereas if you feel it's something inherent in you, there's almost like no choice. So that's another thing that's been very useful for me on my journey as a recovering perfectionist. And yeah, so it doesn't mean that we don't hear the voices, but it means that you can dim the volume on them and be able to move forward even though they're still there.
Thank you. And I've got one question now, which is really aimed at the audience that can relate to your story in particular. So there are lots of people out there that will relate to this hard work ethic, which has been within them for so many years and still maybe remains in them. In my experience, having experienced that myself, I'm not speaking for you now, is sometimes that means our relationships suffer. And I don't mean the relationships that are related to achievement, because they don't suffer. We make sure we spend effort in those. But there are some relationships that suffer because of our hard work ethic. So looking back again, what advice would you give to the audience out there that maybe can relate to your story and maybe are suffering at some point recently or now about maybe not feeling as present in their relationships because of their hard work and the choice around that? What advice would you give them about how they might want to look at that?
I think it's step back and work out what's really important for you. Think about who you want to be. Think about 10 years from now when you're looking back at the past decade, how you've invested your time. Think consciously about those choices. It's a choice. It's a choice that you make, and it's a choice that we've all made. And then allocate the time to what's important. And you can, and I'm not saying this from somebody who's always got it right, definitely not, but you can focus on key relationships and still be very ambitious and driven from a work perspective. They're not mutually exclusive. It does require you, though, perhaps to do work in a different way. As a leader, working on the business rather than in the business is very important. If you're leading a team, then you have to give them the empowerment and space to do. Your role becomes different. They should have the space to do their own job. You can guide them and inspire them, but you don't have to do all the doing, and that should create space for you to have a balance. And in choices, I haven't yet discovered an answer to make sure I can deliver all my choices. But the things that are important to me are family, very important. My immediate family. I have a very close group of friends, and then work, and then there's other things. I have a wider group of people that probably I don't spend enough time with in terms of, and that's just because I'm prioritizing different things. And when we do get together, it's fun, but yeah, that's the choice that we make. So I think it's recognizing it's a choice, and the people who are in control of that choice are us as individuals. It's other people may influence that choice, but ultimately it's our choice to make. We have that power. Sometimes we can give that power to other people, but that's not healthy.
I'm not sure if you can relate to this, but I certainly can from your story so far, is with that hard work ethic, and you're right, we make the choices about where we spend our time. I also find sometimes that maybe because of who we are, we don't ask for the help that maybe we should. I don't just mean from our team. I mean, actually, around us, above us, whether that's mentors, coaches, people to help us create the space because they can see ways of doing that. Just give us an example where you've done that in the past to good effect and it was the right point of time for you to do that.
Well, I'd say in general, this isn't a core strength of mine, Andrew, and it's asking for help. So yeah, again, I've gone on a journey from I'm not going to ask for help because I look weak to knowing it's perfectly fine. I encourage everybody else to ask for help, but don't seem to do it myself. Actually, I can ask for help, and there's so many things, especially in my current role. There's so many things that I need help. I need help with that. It means you connect well with people. It bonds you even closer to them. And what success is ultimately the team winning. And so if other people can definitely help you achieve that. And so it can be via asking them for advice. It can be asking them just to listen. It can be asking them, just to be with this problem that I might have, and that's kind of really, really helpful. There are I can think of a recent example in terms of where we went for a walk around our office here in Richmond, and that was really, really helpful in terms of helping me have a different perspective on something, and I wouldn't have got there by myself. And it was very good of that person, but I also needed to be open to that, and I've got better at that over time. I set up, Andrew, this business a while back, which I've now parked, called Generous Spirits, and I've always believed that generosity is a key part of leadership. But it's been only until kind of recently that I've realized that you can't really be generous to other people unless it starts with a generosity to yourself. And I've probably been reasonably good over the years about being generous to other people. And I'm a late bloomer in terms of being generous to myself. And part of that generosity to yourself is being open to other people to help.
And I love what you said there because it links into an earlier comment you made where actually being generous with your own time with yourself. A lot of leaders I work with almost sometimes are anxious about the fact of creating some space and time because they don't know what to do with it because they're used to doing so much and achieving so much. But actually what I find is we are generous with our time to ourselves. And as you said, going for a walk there to create space and time, usually the right kind of solution steps into that space when we create it. So I really love what you said there. Thank you. We're coming towards the end of our time together, but I love the next question because I'm really interested in what you're doing in the future as well. So just share with the audience a little bit about what are you going to be in service of in the near future, in the longer term, and if people want to collaborate with you in some way, how to get in contact with you. Just tell us about that.
Oh, well, what I'm in service of is really helping the people I work with deliver consistently high-class performance by being the best version of themselves. And so this is partly my coaching background, my leadership background, but that's the thing which gives me the most fulfillment. As I mentioned before, it's you can have high-class performance, world-class performance, and being people-centric, and that the two are inextricably linked. And so being able to support that, I think, is an important thing. I've always liked coaching and mentoring. You can do that as a leader. You can do that as a side hustle. There's this wonderful program that people have started in the whiskey industry called Our Whiskey, which is about promoting greater diversity and inclusivity in whiskey to make sure that it isn't just people that look like me in terms of involved in whiskey. And in a very small way, I've started supporting that because, again, mentoring is something I really like doing. So, yeah, helping teams and individuals win and deliver results that they never thought was possible by being the best version of themselves. That's what I'm in service of.
Well, Maurice, that's a really great place to finish, I think. So I really appreciate you sharing your experiences, being so vulnerable with our audience today. I know that many of them out there will have been inspired to reflect not only on their own leadership style, but also how they might take a different approach to leading themselves as you've done during your career. So once again, thank you very much for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.